Trump supporters running around that Miami area, around that courthouse. Not as much here, but definitely has grown in the last few hours, I would say.
Ken Blaney, thank you so much, and keep us apprised. I know that the courthouse proceedings are over, but things have a way of evolving on stories like this over the course of the day. We really appreciate it, Ken. Thank you.
Yeah. I just want to make a point, and Andrew can back me up here. Admonishments, I think, are normal. Sure. Don't tamper with the jury. Unless I'm wrong, is not a standard thing that a judge says to everyone walking in and out of a federal courthouse for arraignment. Like, that strikes me as a very Trump-specific admonishment. And
every judge has their own boilerplate, right, in terms of what they do. I don't know what this magistrate judge does in every proceeding.
I don't know either. Yeah. I just think it's possible. I would just leave open the possibility that this magistrate judge's boilerplate isn't "don't tamper with the jury." I really don't think that's Andrew, you've appeared in these arraignments, and I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, so two things stood out to me as unusual. It is not unusual for the magistrate judge to have talked to the assigned district judge to find out what the next date is. What is unusual is that, to your point, Chris, to be so focused on the trial date and to have from the district judge the dates by which she wants submissions on that issue, and it's going to be decided on the 28th. That, to me, is for people who are thinking that she is not focused on whether this can go to trial before the general election. That is the issue. And it is also clear that John Lauro knows that, and that is the reason he started saying, I need to know about the volume of discovery, because it's going to be a little eye-popping. There is going to be a huge amount, and the government's going to have to deal with that issue, but that's going to be the fight. The second thing is to Chris's point about usually the standard condition that a judge emphasizes, and I thought when I heard it was going to be, and she reiterated, the most important thing is, I thought it was going to be that you have to show up at each court appearance. That is the most important thing. That is what bail is for, is that you will show up in court. When I heard that the standard condition and the most important thing is do not commit a crime, followed up by do not tamper with a juror, my reaction was I was a prosecutor for 21 years. I was a defense lawyer for 5 years. I have never heard that.
Wow. I stand corrected. Absolutely.
I would love to ask you, Andrew, a couple of things. Number one is, given the unusual things that I think we now all agree were unusual that were said, does it give you sort of a rethink on what the delay might have been? Or do you still believe that it didn't have something to do with
the quarter-hour delay?
Yeah, the quarter-hour delay. Have you rethought that?
I think that there's no question that that's not the talking to the district judge. The district judge would have said, these are the dates, okay. This is what I want to know. I really do think that the standard procedure, which I'm confident the court will want to follow, is you have to hear from pretrial services about standard conditions of release. It's just, in some ways, it's respecting the pretrial services officer, that's what happens. A defendant is interviewed, a report is issued, the defense is entitled to see it, the government sees it, the court sees it. So I think the delay, usually the defendant is there hours before the court appearance. So here, if the defendant is getting there late, I don't mean that in a bad way, I just mean that there's a tight time frame. You have to allow that process. That's my best guess is the reason for a slight delay.
And a quick follow-up, what did feel unusual to me too, given the fact that Donald Trump has a history of attacking Jack Smith personally, attacking his wife, and that people around him, like Roger Stone, have histories of attacking the judge. This judge would single out the jury and not talk about not making inflammatory comments about the prosecutor, because that is something Trump has done.
Well, also remember, before any criminal case, Judge Kaplan, overseeing the E. Jean Carroll case, on his own, took steps to protect the jury in that case and give admonitions in a civil case with respect to the former president of the United States taking steps to interfere with the jury in that civil case. So it's not surprising, given that And given, just remember, any other defendant who is facing obstruction of justice charges in this many cases, this is not a surprising development, other than if you suddenly are thinking about the fact that what his former position was, that he was the former president. But if you want to treat him the way anybody else would, this is what you do.
It is now 5 p.m. on the East Coast. Just to recap what has happened in the last hour, former President Donald Trump has now been arraigned on 4 federal felony counts related to his attempts to overturn the 2020 election, his attempts to stay in power against the will of the voters. It has finally happened. Trump was in the courtroom, as was special counsel Jack Smith and his team. As of 4 p.m., the magistrate judge entered the courtroom at 4:15, 15 minutes later. That was a 15-minute period in which we all increasingly boiled. But then at 4:15, the arraignment got underway. The judge read out the 4 counts against Trump and advised Trump of his rights at this hearing, which Trump acknowledged he understood. Then the former president pled. He pled not guilty to all 4 counts. The judge emphasized to Mr. Trump that the conditions of his release ahead of the trial include not committing a crime. The judge was very explicit about that. The judge then immediately and explicitly told him that tampering with a juror is a crime. Again, as Andrew Weissmann was just saying, having been a prosecutor for decades and even a defense counsel thereafter, those were not words that he's used to hearing at a booking like this. The magistrate judge then set the next court appearance after some discussion and negotiation for August 28th at 10 a.m. Now, that will be an appearance not before this same magistrate judge, but before Judge Tanya Chutkan. She's the federal district court judge who will be handling this case all the way through trial. And according to the magistrate judge today, she says she has communicated with Judge Chutkan already about this process and this schedule. She says Judge Chutkan intends to set a trial date at that first hearing, at that August 28th hearing. Again, not something we necessarily expected to hear, but something notable in terms of what the pace of this overall proceeding will be. Now, the discussion after those important parts of the arraignment were done turned to the issue of evidence, discovery, what the government has to turn over to defense counsel, how much of it there will be, and how much time they will have to work with the evidence before they're expected in the courtroom with opening statements. The government now has 7 days to file a submission saying when they think a trial should be set. Trump's defense counsel will then have 5 days to respond to that. But again, we expect after the prosecution has made that case to the judge and the defense counsel has made their case to the judge will then decide on August 28th when the trial will start. In the courtroom today, prosecutors made clear they want to go as soon as possible, while Trump's team asked for the latest date offered, even for that first court hearing. Trump's team said they need a lot of time to prepare and that the strictures of the Speedy Trial Act are, in their words, quote, absurd when applied to what they expect to be the pace of this case. Then it was over. The judge left the courtroom, and then Donald Trump left the courtroom. He's been arrested, he's been indicted, arrested, and arraigned 3 times in 4 months. None of this is normal, but this is our life now. Now Trump is headed back to Washington's National Airport. He's actually at Washington's National Airport. He will fly from National Airport to Newark, the airport in New Jersey, the major airport in New Jersey, and then from there he will return by motorcade to his golf club in Bedminster, New Jersey. Joining us now as part of our special coverage is a special guest. Harry Dunn was, of course, one of the officers who defended the Capitol on January 6th, law enforcement who defended the Capitol on January 6th.